Hello and welcome to the course Private Pilot Maneuvers. Today we'll talk a little bit about night operations. Now normally when you do your private pilot's license under EASA rules, you will most probably just do it to get your day VFR PPL. It's possible to do the night rating along with that right away, but of course you need to fly a few hours at night and so on. So most people from my experience do that afterwards, after they got their private pilot's license. Some a few months, some a few years later, they then do the night edition to get your night rating, which allows you then to do everything you're licensed for also at night, be it VFR or IFR flight. Well, there's a whole theory course you need to take for the night rating. So this, of course, exceeds the scope of this course here. I'm just giving you a brief overview of some practical aspects of night flying, but this is in no way exhaustive. And you will learn more, of course, during the actual night rating course in theory and in practice. Now, the first thing that's good to know is when do I need a night rating? Well, night starts at at the end of civil evening twilight, and it ends at the beginning of civil morning twilight. Now, those times can be looked up in the AIP of the respective country, but nowadays, of course, there are many apps who also tell you those times. You need to know, of course, that they are different depending on the time of year. So every day it will be a little different. And basically, those two times are the times when the middle of the sun disk is 6 degrees below the horizon. It's important to know that because as a normal day VFR pilot, you need to be on the ground by the end of civil evening twilight. Anything after that, you need the night rating. Now, in a theory course, you'll hear a lot about the eye and how it adapts to night conditions, and of course, how night vision is different from a day vision. Just very briefly, of course, first thing that's important is that the eyes need to adapt to the darkness. So it's not a good idea to step out of a well-illuminated briefing room directly into the airplane and take off within 5 minutes. Because then the eyes won't have adapted to the dark. Normally it's best if you give them at least 30 minutes in darker conditions to adapt. I know that's often hard to do, but if you can, don't expose yourself to bright light immediately before taking off or even taxiing. Also, one trick you can do at night is if you want to look at an object more closely, don't look directly at it, but slightly to the left or right of it. Then you will see it more clearly. You can see this depicted in the image just to my right. Also, you may have noticed that flashlights for pilots, most of the times there is some cover you can put on the light that makes the light red. And that's because exposing the eye to white light, well, it destroys all the adaptation to the darkness that the eye has already done, but it's not the case with red light. So it's advisable to have a red light during the night on your flashlight, for example, to read a chart or just illuminate anything you need. Okay. Now you need to know the requirements, of course, for the equipment you need in terms of the airplane, especially lighting, of course. There is exterior lighting you need to have, like, of course, position lights, red left, green right, and white to the back. But there are also requirements for interior lights, like instrument lights. Also the need under EASA rules to carry a flashlight, one flashlight for each crew member, for example. Generally, can be said that an electrical failure during night flying is more critical normally as during the day. Because, of course, for example, if you lose your instrument lights, this could create a hazardous situation. That's not a big deal during the day. Also, especially in dark nights, when the weather is not too good, um, it may be difficult to see the natural horizon actually. So you need to reference more to your flight instrument. So be sure you are proficient with that. Also remember, if the conditions warrant it, to switch on the pitot heat if you have one. It's more difficult to judge your approach angle at night. And there have been studies that are showing that most pilots during a so-called black hole approach, and that is when you're approaching a runway that is in a very dark environment. So you maybe only see runway lights, but all the other areas completely dark around it. Most pilots then do to get too low on approach, and this may in extreme cases result in landing short or hitting an obstacle during your final approach. So what's very helpful is if your airport has a visual approach slope indicator, a VASI or a PAPI. Basically, it's showing you your glide angle to the runway. Normally it's a 3 degrees, or if you're on the correct angle, this is normally shown by at the VASI one red and one white light. Then you are exactly on a 3-degree slope towards the runway, but this can be different at some airports. And then there's the PAPI, which is even more precise. You will normally have 4 lights in a row, and so 2 whites, 2 red means you are exactly on glide path. 1 red means, 3 red means you're a little low, and 4 red means you're very low. And the same goes with the whites. And this is a very important thing to have during night approaches. So if you're lucky enough to have one, use it. It's very helpful because this avoids getting too low on final. If you don't have a PAPI or any visual approach slope indicator, just be aware of the black hole effect and stay a little bit higher than you actually would normally. Also, do not descend too early. So if you're unsure about terrain below you, really wait until you're in the airport area where you know the terrain is flatter and descend there. Now for the flare is harder to do at night. Most pilots at first have the problem that they often flare too late or too early. It's simply harder to judge the altitude during the flare. That's because there are way less perceptible objects in the vicinity that you could use to judge your altitude. What helps a little is if you have a landing light, of course. So normally it's a good idea to start the flare when the landing light starts to illuminate those rubber markings on the runway and you clearly see them. Now, if you don't have a landing light, of course this is more difficult. Often it works quite well in this case that you start your flare as soon as the far end of the runway seems to be rising above your nose. Generally, most landing lights of small airplanes, are pretty weak, so I don't expect too much from them. They will only be able to illuminate the ground and also a quite small area of the ground when you're pretty close to it already. Also be aware of some illusions during night flying. One of them, for example, is a false horizon. Now, if you look at that picture, you can see all those lines of light, maybe street lights, and they can easily be mistaken for the horizon. If you're not able to see the natural horizon because the night is that dark or maybe the visibility is not that good, then it's very easy to mistake any of these more or less horizontal lines with the horizon and to inadvertently adjust your bank angle to them as if they were the natural horizon. And this can lead to inadvertent turning and in extreme cases to loss of control. Also, you should be aware of runway and approach lights and the respective equipment your destination or of course also departure airport has. So check the charts and all available information before to find out if the airport has, for example, approach lights. What kind of approach lights? Does it have precision approach path indicator lights? At the very least, of course, the runway must have edge lights because otherwise no night operations can be possible. But it might only have edge lights. It might not have centerline lights, might not have approach lights. So be aware of that. Of course, the less lights, the higher the chance of flying that black hole approach and getting too low on final. What you should also keep in mind is the scenario of an engine failure. Now, an engine failure in a single engine airplane is at night way more critical than during the day, of course, simply because you cannot recognize the terrain on the ground as well as during the day. Actually, in many cases, you are not able to judge it at all. So there's a lot of luck involved in choosing your correct landing site for a forced landing during the night. If you have an airport available, okay, that's good, if it is lighted. But if not, you need a lot of luck. Except if it's a very, very bright night, a lot of moonlight and so on. So always, if you're approaching an airport, like in this case, where you're approaching over the city, I mean, this in this case is true for flying during the day as well. Approach an altitude where, in the case of an engine failure, you're able to reach your runway. Or if it's during cruise flight, it's best if you plan your route of flight in such a way that you fly in the vicinity of usable airports as much as possible. So I would really take a detour of a few miles if it takes me closer to an airport where, in the case of engine failure, I would have a landing opportunity. Because an off-airport landing during night is really hazardous. Okay, so this was just a very brief overview of night operations. As I've said, there's a complete night flying course that you need to take when you want to fly at night. But anyway, I'd say let's go flying for a little bit during the night, just to find out all those different visual sensations that come with night flying. So I'll see you in the airplane.